So today I actually have something pretty interesting to show you guys. I recently did my unboxing of the Intel SSD 510 series, codename Elmcrest SSD, and I've actually got some results for you guys. So this video is going to focus on Crystal Disk Mark, which is a pretty well-established disk benchmarking tool these days, and I've benchmarked a variety of different configurations for the purpose of finding out a couple of things. This is a synthetic benchmark, okay, so bear in mind that the results are not necessarily always comparable from one drive to another, and it's not always necessarily an indication of real-world performance, but I wanted to find out in a synthetic benchmark how a single 510 series SSD compares to two 510 series SSDs, as well as how using the onboard SATA3 6 gigabit per second port versus using the onboard SATA2 3 gigabit per second ports affect the performance of this drive. So I'm going to walk you guys through this one by one. Here we have a single drive with SATA3 6 gigabit per second. You can see here that the write speeds are largely unaffected by the wider data bus. However, the read speeds, especially these sequential results, are, well, mostly the sequential results, are significantly higher if you give it a pipe that's twice as wide to move the data through. So that's how the performance compared as far as single drive goes. Okay, so then we've got our dual drive configuration. So here I've configured it in RAID0, running off the integrated SATA3 6 gigabit per second controller on my P67 motherboard. You can see right here that the sequential read scale incredibly well. This is the best results I've seen out of a 2-drive configuration for straight reads ever. We're up near a 1 gigabyte per second read speed sequential, and we're over 400 megabytes per second write speed. So it's phenomenal. However, you can see here that once again, write speeds are largely unaffected by the larger data bus, and it's mostly the read speeds, especially once again sequentials, that are going to benefit from that larger data bus. The reason for that is that when you're reading and writing more complicated data, it becomes more controller bound and less bound by the actual interface itself. So just as points of comparison, I have included results with these dual 510 series SSDs running off an LSI 9268i RAID controller card. These are the best results that I was able to obtain with the RAID card over here. So you can see that there are slight differences. Actually, here I'm going to move this window over so you can compare them a little bit more easily between the onboard RAID and the RAID card, particularly in the 512K sequential results right here. Everything else is pretty close, although we did manage to get better 4K reads, but actually slower 4K writes. Now that was with a fair amount of tinkering around with the settings, but I'm sure as the firmware gets updated on these, on the high-end RAID controller cards, and as the community tinkers around with them and finds out how to get the most performance out of a 510 series SSD, we're probably going to see better results. I've also included the results from a RevoDrive X2 240 gig, so that's what I've actually got on the test bench down here right now. And you can see that sequentially, bearing in mind we're using random data with Crystal Mark this time around, so SandForce is at a bit of a disadvantage here, but you can see that sequentially it is not as strong of a performer as two 120 gig SSD 510 series drives. However, when you look at the high load random reads and writes, it absolutely destroys the dual 510 series SSD setup. So it's all about what kind of workloads you're going to be using, and thank you for checking out my video on the Crystal Mark performance of the Intel SSD 510 series. Don't forget to subscribe to Linus Tech Tips for more unboxings, reviews, and other videos.